Hi everyone, Jay here from Jade Productions, bringing you a review, analysis, and thoughts on the Craftworld section of the Psychic Awakening Part 1 Phoenix Rising. Now, full disclaimer, I haven't finished reading the lore on that, so there will be a video maybe later on that, depending on what I want to do, because often, a lot of the times, finding videos and just nice quick summaries of the newest snippet of campaign book is really annoying in my experience. It makes me have to go out and buy them or do lots of research or wait months on hand like Vigilus. In the end, I actually just went out and read Vigilus. Anyway, so this video will focus entirely on the Craftworld, their new rules, their new stuff, how that works, how that plays, now that I've had a chance to actually play with it myself in a competitive environment, and give some feedback on what I think is really good for those of you playing with the Eldar, those of you getting new to the Eldar, and those of you who are wondering just what this book really means, and about what is kind of the best stuff in here, some really cool things. This video will focus exclusively on the Craftworlds. I'll do a separate one for the Drukhari and the Inari, but long story short, the Drukhari got less unit rules and less rules in general, like less supplemental rules, and more just make your own cabals, and covens and cults, which are really, really cool. In fact, I'm gonna say, based on the ones I've read, they are vastly superior to the Craftworld attributes. And then the Inari, if you know that, all the stuff that was in White Dwarf, that's not the same. They haven't changed a bit. Points have gone down on the Incarn. That's the only one that matters, realistically. If you're not bringing, a full Inari list, you really just want the Incarn if you're bringing Craftworlds. Which is great, because now he's gone down and he's a HQ. Now, again, the same things, Inari units, if you bring any unit with the Inari keyword that's not one of the Triumvirate, Evrain, the Vaisaka, Incarn, the most important one, you don't get any of these new special rules. You don't get the powers of the Aspect Shrine, the Runes of Fortune, or the Craftworld attributes. Straight out there, what you would expect. Updated rules are in this book for Jane Czar and the Howling Banshees, which I'll go through them in a moment. You have the powers of the Aspect Shrine. These are new powers for your Aspect Warrior X-Archers, which can be found on the pages, and you can use them to replace certain abilities on each data sheet. If you have a Battle-Forged army, you can create X-Arch of Legends by spending command points to add additional abilities. Yeah, it sounds cool, but it's not as cool as you'd think. Your Runes of Fortune are kinda cool. So you will find a new Psychic Discipline for the Azuriani with new minor Psychic powers which are easier to manifest. These powers are cool. They replace Smite. We'll get a bit more on them in a little bit. Then finally you got your Craftworld attributes, which you basically combine two in order to create your thing. Now, updated points-wise, Jane Czar's 115 with her war gear included. Howling Banshees are 9 points a model. Power Swords, Mirror Swords are 4 points. Banshee Mask is still 0 points. Because if that went up in points, I would have a public outcry, because that thing being 0 points saves my bacon every single time. Amen for Banshee Masks. Always have something in your army with a Banshee Mask. The Shuriken Pistol is 0 points. The Triskel is 6 points. The Execution is 7 points. That does it for those changes. You've got your name generator, which is very cool. Now, you've got Jane Czar, fancy new model. Finally, Plastic Phoenix Lords. It's about goddamn time. I just wish they'd given us more. Give me more. Give me the other ones. Give me Azuraman. Give me the Lord of Science. Give me Fugan. Give me Baharath. Give me all of them. Give me all of them. I don't just want Jane Czar and Irilith. Irilith, for those of you who don't know, is the Phoenix Lord of the Shadow Spectres, which are a Forge World unit, which are pretty fantastic and very trolly. I need to get some, because I don't have enough. Okay, so you've got Jane Czar. Profile is pretty much what you'd expect. The movement 8, the 2-up, 2-up, strength 4, T4, 6 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9, 2-up save. Yep. She's got the Silent Death, Blade of Destruction. You've probably all seen a lot of this before in the community previews. She's got Ancient Doom, Battle Focus, which, sure, you can throw your Silent Death 12 inches at without you know, any real issue there. Still hitting on a 2-up without any modifiers. Cool. It's strength 4. It's 4 shots. It's AP minus 3, which is pretty good for Eldar weaponry. It's still at 12-inch range, but hey, she's throwing it. The Blade of Destruction is pretty good. Strength 6, because it's plus 2. AP minus 3, sure. D3 damage, yeah, okay. I will always rather take flat damage, but that's not something the Eldar exactly do. When resolving an attack made with this weapon, you can reroll the wound rolls. Fantastic, because those are the things you're going to be struggling with, even at strength 6. Because everything you want to hit is either going to be wounding it on 3s or wounding it on 5s. It's just the way you go. So you got your acrobatic, which is, you know it, you love it from your from the standard banshees. You can still run and charge. You can charge even if they're within 15, and you can add 3 to the charge roll. Storm of Silence, when it fights, you can choose for its attack's characteristic equal to the number of models within 2 inches of it after any pile-in moves have been made. This is fantastic. I look forward to getting my Jane's Arm model when I get the chance, when hopefully they'll release it separately eventually. Games Workshop's been really bad on releasing character models from boxes. But combined with Supreme Disdain and charging into a blob of orcs or other Gek, this can be really good at clearing stuff out. It's really good counter to being mobbed. It means that she doesn't fall to numbers as easily. The Banshee Mask, of course, she's got, which shuts down... Oh, no, she doesn't have a Banshee Mask. Oh, no, she's got a Banshee Mask. It's just not listed in War Gear. Strange. Okay, but she does have a Banshee Mask, which means you can charge it into any sort of overwatching screen and absolutely tear them to pieces if they've got high enough numbers. Cool. Cry of War Unending. This model and friendly howling banshees that are within 6 inches of it at the start of the fight phase always fight first in the fight phase, even if they did not charge. Even if enemy units have a similar ability, you go back and forth, you know, yada yada yada, you know how it works. If they also fight first, it just works as normal. You take turns going back and forth. If not, hooray! You basically always want to be charging, and basically if you didn't kill what you wanted to charge and there's no enemies to threaten you, nah. Jane Czar is less so. I mean, it affects her. No, it doesn't. She doesn't even have the Howling Banshee keyword. That's sad. Okay, so it really only affects Howling Banshees, which are a glass cannon unit that are going to charge and either kill what you want, tie up what you want, or just roll over and die. Howling Banshees, in my experience, are the best way to use them due to their price point and their ability to shut down Overwatch, is literally just a really cheap screen that you can just use to tie up an enemy unit. Don't expect them to do a lot against certain things, but they're an extremely great utility. The War Shout, the usual, when resolving attacks against in melee, subtract 1 from hit rolls. Yeah. She's cool. She's got her uses. She's definitely powerful. I'd almost want to bring her on her own without any Howling Banshee support, because the things I want to send her after are things totally different to the things I want to send the Howling Banshees after, funnily enough. So, the best way to think of it is just a super Howling Banshee that costs, you know, twice as much. So then you've got your Howling Banshees. These are relatively unchanged by the looks. I've got my codex packed away for an upcoming tournament, and I can't be bothered fishing it out. But there's still the movement 8, there's still the 3-up, strength 3, T3, 2 wounds on the sergeant, 2 attacks, 3 attacks on the sergeant, leadership 8, 4-up save. Nothing changed there. They come with their, their shuriken pistols and power swords. Every model has a Banshee Mask. Nothing's really changed there. The Triskel is Assault 3, Strength 4, AP minus 2. The Executioner is the same, so you go up to Strength 4, AP minus 3, D3. The Mirror Swords, when resolving, are still basically Strength 3 shredding... reroll hit rolls. So, yeah, they're okay. It would have been better if they were wound rolls still. Those of us who built our Howling Banshees like that when they were still made of metal still highly regret building them with Mirror Swords. Speaking about myself. So, the Exarch can, of course, do the usual thing with replacing his weapons for the ones you know. The Acrobatic is still there. The War Shout is still there for the X-Arch, and the Banshee Mask is still there. They're just very nice, new plastic models, look vastly superior to my old, clunky metal pieces of shit that I absolutely love. Now, powers of the Aspect Shrines. Between attributes, runes of fortune, and the aspect powers, I definitely believe that the aspect powers are going to be the most important thing to come out of this book for Craftworld players. They've definitely had the most impact for me when it comes to list building, and they definitely had the most impact in the game. So, you have the usual thing. Each one's got a stratagem, that's 1 CP. Use a stratagem before the battle. When you select a whatever X-Arch power from the list opposite, you can take that ability in addition to the standard one you have. You can only use a stratagem once per battle. So, my issue with that is, now I've not used it once simply because Crackshot's okay, but I will never want to take a Crackshot and one of these other things. It would be great if I could have 2 of the new X-Arch powers, because there's some fun things you could do in there. But Crackshot, no. I'd rather just Guide My Guys or Doom. So, the X-Arch powers for the Fire Dragons. You have the Dragon's Bite. So, this is a pretty cool one, but it banks on you have to actually get into combat. It basically, whilst your unit contains a Fire Dragon X-Arch, at the start of the shooting phase, you can change the type characteristic of this unit's fusion guns to pistol 1 until the end of the phase. Now, it's really good, firstly, because it affects the entire unit. Any X-Arch power that affects the entire unit is typically pretty fantastic, because it's giving much more force multiplication. Now, this is cool because you can shoot something up, you can charge in, and if you make it, you can then, tie it up. You'll have tied up that tank, and then you can just finish up that tank, and then charge on elsewhere, and keep doing that. It's good for wrecking the back lines if you can do that. It's also good for finishing off things, or even trying to snipe away at a knight, except the knight can just walk away. It's better used on things that really don't have fly, or can't retreat and still shoot. But the issue is, once again, melee, and it's not somewhere where you want your Fire Dragons to be. You really don't want your Fire Dragons to be there. I mean, just having them as pistol 1 instead of assault, no, you're not going to change that unless you're in melee. So, it's an okay, if highly situational power. Tank Killer is, in my opinion, better. When resolving an attack made with a Fire Pike by this unit's Fire Dragon X-Arch against a vehicle, you can re-roll 1d6 when making the damage roll. Now, this can make all the difference in the world if you get a really crappy roll, if you're just rolling 1d6, or if you roll 2d6 and get a really, really bad roll. That re-roll saves you a CP that you were probably going to spend anyway. It's okay, it only affects your X-Arch, but your X-Arch with the Fire Pike also has a longer range, so he's also got the higher range for doing the 2d6 from the melter. So, yeah, that's always fantastic. It means he can do it a bit better when he comes out of Deep Strike. So, it's a power worth considering. It's one I took. Sadly, my Fire Dragons died in one game so far, and the second game, they also died because people have a habit of shooting my Fire Dragons with stupid stratagems and or knocking them out of their transports and focusing fire with Baneblades. Anyway, so, Burning Fists, melee weapons that the unit's Fire Dragon X-Arch is equipped with have an armor pen of 2 and a damage characteristic of 2. Pass! Oh, you also get to re-roll by the unit. Oh, the X-Arch also gets to re-roll wound rolls. I was misreading that for a moment there. I thought it affected the unit. As I thought, I hadn't tried that one out yet, and mostly I'd been skipping over it because I saw, once again, melee, never use. Switch step. While this unit contains a Fire Dragon X-Arch, when this unit advances, you can roll 3d6 and discard 2 of the results. To be honest, if you're not running transports, or if you even are running transports, this is fantastic. This one, next to Tank, I think this one's like the auto-include after Tank Killer. Just because the number one thing that frustrates me playing Craftworld these days is I don't have Fleet of Foot from 7th edition anymore. If I roll to advance, I've got assault weapons. I'm an army that should almost always be advancing, making the most of superior movement. Because movement wins games, and Eldar are especially Craftworld Eldar, and Dark Eldar even more so, and Harlequins even more so. Movement is where you rule. Movement is how you win. Now, that's awesome, because it's Fleet of Foot on steroids. You get to roll 3d6 and discard 2 results. Sure, I'll take that every day of the week. Thank you very much. Because nothing is more infuriating I need to advance, and I rolled a 1. I'm not going to spend CP on making that a 6, and I'm not going to spend CP on re-rolling that. Because that's just ridiculous. Why can't I just re-roll it for free like I used to? You got Wall of Fire, which is an attempt to make the flamer that the Exarch can get a bit better. It does not. No. The mortal wounds just aren't worth it. Move on. So, Burning Heat, you subtract 1 from... It's another melee 1. You get -1 to hit your fire dragons if you're Exarch alive in melee. In melee. They want your fire dragons to be in melee. That's the last place your fire dragons should be. Never have the... No. Fire dragons, melee, no. Eldar, melee, no. The only time it should be in melee if it's Eldar. If it has the word Wraith, if it has the word Banshee, or if it has the word Scorpion in its name. Or Phoenix Lord. Now, the Dire Avengers. Your good old bread and butter. These are pretty cool. So, you've got Bladestorm, which this one immediately stood out to me until I kinda read it a bit more. So, whilst this unit contains a Dire Avenger Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon that does not have the grenade type, by a model in this unit, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 scores 1 additional hit. Now, it's the standout. Of the two, there are 2 particular powers that, in my opinion, I was like, okay, these are the ones you want. Bladestorm is one of them. 1, it affects your whole squad. 2, you get a lot of shots with your Dire Avengers if you bring them in big squads, or even in small squads if you load them up. With Doom, you get to re-roll wounds. With Guide, you can re-roll hits if you really want to waste your Guide on that. But it has the chance of giving you additional hits, which if you've doomed something, you can pour that fire into there, and you're aiming. You're trying to scratch paint, but never underestimate the power of massed shuriken fire. And anything that increases that, and just increases the damage output of the Dire Avengers in general, is fantastic. Would I take this over the Battle Fortune? Every day. Would I combine Battle Fortune and Bladestorm? No. No, I'd rather not have a 4-up invul just for my guy if I'm running the Bladestorm. Defend. It's the same thing for before with the Fire Dragons. Why are you in melee? -1s are... Except it's -1 to wound. So... Still no. Stand Firm. This is the other one that immediately stood out to me. Now, this is one I could see spending the CP to take with the Battle Fortune. I haven't taken it yet. I've just run it by itself. Stand Firm. They auto-pass morale test. That's great. You can bring your giant 10-man blobs. It would be better if you could have Stand Firm and Bladestorm, but we can't have our cake and eat it too. Now, so between Bladestorm and Stand Firm, I think those are the go-to ones. Bladestorm, better on the smaller units. Stand Firm, obviously better on the bigger units. Martial Adept. This unit's Dire Avenger Exarch has a weapon skill, ballistic skill of 2+. Hey, we're playing it like it's 7th edition now. No thanks. Shredding Fire. This one only affects your Exarch, which means it's only good if you're running your Exarch with the 2 Avenger catapults, which is the second best loadout. It's the best loadout tied with the Glaive and Shimmer Shield. because the Shimmer Shield gives an invul. So all of his weapons have an AP, or rather, all of his non-grenade type weapons that are ranged weapons have AP -3 instead of their ability. Yeah. So essentially you have one guy in the unit rending. Now I'd rather take Bladestorm every day of the week. The Avenging Strikes, not interested, you've got to be in melee. No one wants to be in melee. Dark Reapers, everyone's pudding. Now, this unit is absolutely infuriating. Even a single unit properly supported absolutely wrecks someone's day. If you're bringing lots of Dark Reapers, you are officially an asshole. I've been called an asshole just by fielding one unit of 5. That's how good they are. The Dark Reaper powers, how much better do they make them? Well, it really depends. Rapid Shot was my go-to one when I tested it out. It was the first one I wanted to test out. I ran it in both games so far. Gonna continue running it, simply because it's fantastic no matter... well, it's fantastic unless you're bringing the Tempest Launcher. Your X-Arch Reaper essentially gets an extra shot with whatever range weapon he's got. 2 missile shots. 2 Reaper launcher shots. 3 Reaper launcher shots with the marine killing missiles. Yeah, that's good. It's not a huge buff, but it's also, you know, your opponent feels every shot when it comes to Dark Reapers that are properly supported. So, you have your Rain of Death as your next X-Arch power you can pick. You get to reroll the dice when determining your shots with the Tempest Launcher. That's great if you built your guy with a Tempest Launcher, like I did, because it was the only thing that came in the box when they were made. Still, hey, it's okay. So, Grim Visage, -1 leadership whilst enemies are within 6 inches. No. What the hell are your Dark Reapers doing within 6 inches? Your Dark Reapers should never be within 6 inches of anything but your own guys. Long range fire, you add 6 inches to the range characteristic of the weapons for the whole unit. No, you've got a long enough range. You always hit on 3 pluses. You don't need to move. You don't need to fear moving and firing. You're good. You're fine. You don't need that. Rapid Shot is still the best one. Deadly Touch is again no. The hell are you doing in melee with Dark Reapers? And Focused Fire. This one is one I was sort of tied up on one, and what I was really thinking about it. When this unit is chosen to shoot with, the unit's Dark Reaper X-Arch can target a character unit, even if it's not the closest enemy unit, so long as the target is within 18 inches of the Dark Reaper X-Arch. Everything about that is great right up until you reach the 18 inches, and that's what's prevented me from running it thus far, and that's what prevents me from seeing it, typically, as a good option in a competitive build. Now, you could, hypothetically, stick your Dark Reapers in a transport for whatever reason, and fly them up the board so that they're within 18 inches, or you could deep strike them so that they're within range and snipe out a character with a Strength 8, AP -3, 3 damage shot. But you could give them rapid fire and obliterate their big tanks, and their other nasties, and their monsters, or their marines. Yeah, leave the sniping. I don't know what Games Workshop we were even thinking with that one. Let's have this awesome thing, and now here's a caveat that no one wants and will ever use, making it completely useless. Here's a thing that makes your Dark Reapers potentially overpowered, and it's got such a caveat that no one will ever want to use it. Cool. Rapid Shot is the way to go. Just plain and simple, unless you are running a Tempest Launcher, in which case Rain of Death is mandatory. Howling Banshees. So, I haven't had a chance to play with the Howling Banshees yet, with this new iteration, with their powers. They have the War Shout ability. The War Shout is fantastic, though. This is a unit where I would pay because I like Washout a lot, this is the unit where I would pay 1 CP to bring 2 powers. But the thing about it is, Howling Banshees are such a glass cannon that I would have to bring big squads, and I never bring big squads of Howling Banshees. And the fact that I can only do it to 1 Howling Banshee in my army, I can't MSU the crap out of this to cheeseball it, so I don't know. But you've got Graceful Avoidance while your Howling Banshee Exarch is alive and the unit contains 1. When a model in the unit would lose a wound in the fight phase, you get a 5-up Feel No Pain. On 5+, the wound is not lost. That's good. It increases the survivability of them drastically. Yeah, it's definitely the number 1 choice in my opinion. So far. You have the Piercing Strike. Gives your Exarch different options for hitting. No. Nah. Disarming Strike. At the start of the fight phase, you can select 1 enemy model within 1 inch of the unit's Howling Banshee threat, 2 from the attack's characteristic of that enemy model, minimum of 1. Yeah, maybe. The Feel No Pain is still better. Add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the unit's Howling Banshee Exarch. If the Howling Banshee is equipped with Mirror Swords, add 2. Well, I mean, that's 5 attacks, but I mean, it only if it affected the entire unit, definitely it would be an auto pick, but the fact that it only affects the Exarch makes it kind of second best in my head. Competitively, it's the whole unit you want to be performing, especially with the Eldar. Every unit has its purpose. It's all about the unit. You're not playing Hero Hammer. You're not playing Space Marines, where each sergeant is a mighty demigod of destruction, and can be if you want it to be that way. Decapitating Strike. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit's Howling Banshee Exarch, unmodified hit rolls of 6 inflict a mortal wound in addition. Nah. The Feel No Pain is still better. The Nerve Shredding Shriek, your Howling Banshee gets to select a unit. No. It's okay. On a 4-up, deal D3 mortal wounds after you charge to something within 1. If you're going to take 1 of these, take the bloody Graceful Avoidance for the 5-up Feel No Pain and literally dance around your opponents. If not, keep with your standard Washout, really. The Swooping Hawks. Now, this is a case where I've tried this out, and you will never want the Herald of Victory ability. It's terrible. It only has a 3-inch range. And you will never want to spend a CP to keep it, either. So, welcome to the vast world of making Swooping Hawks better. The first one is Intercept. Whilst this unit contains Swooping Hawk Exarch, when resolving an attack made by a model in this unit against an enemy unit that has fly, you can reroll the hit roll. Suppressing Fire. When this unit's Swooping Hawk Exarch fires Overwatch at an enemy unit, subtract 2 from the charge roll. That's okay if you're bringing them as a screen, or if you're intending to, throw them in front of something. Still not the better one. I see better ones. So you've got Evade, you've got your Swooping Hawk gets a 5-up invul, and no, they're made of confetti, it's not worth it. Rapid Assault, this one was definitely not worth it. When you charge or were charged, add 2 to the attack characteristic of your Swooping Hawk Exarch. Basically, I'm going to tell you right now, the last 2 on these power lists are the best ones. Period. Fast Shot. The ranged weapons of your Swooping Hawk Exarch is equipped with have the type characteristic of Assault 6. Your Sun Rifle now has 6 shots. Sweet. 2 extra shots. Done dealio. That's pretty fantastic. Extra shots is good. It's a Strength 5 weapon. The Swooping Hawks are all about anti-infantry Daka, and that just gives you more shots. There's nothing... It's good. It's not fantastic. It's nothing special. It's nothing to go, ooh, ah. It's just plainly more efficient for the overall unit than Herald of Victory is. Sweeping Barrage. Whilst this unit contains a Sweeping Hawk Exarch, add 1 to the rolls made for this unit's Sweeping Hawk Grenade Pack. Probably the best one, simply because you're now doing those on 5s. Look, if you're running your guys to do lots of grenade hits, if your enemy's got lots of blobs to be taken care of, yes, the barrage is good. Extra mortal wounds. No one's going to argue with mortal wounds on a 5-up. It's plain, it's a little bit boring. Both of those are a little bit boring compared to all the other ones, but they're also the most reliable and therefore the most competitive. Fast Shot was definitely worth it in my games. And it reached a point there, I wish I had Sweeping Barrage in a few of them. So, there were a few moments where I was like, I really wish I had Sweeping Barrage. But I had Fast Shot instead, which still did its work. So, Striking Scorpions. You have Sustained Attack as your standard one, which we all know. It's fine, your Exarch is 6 to hits, cause extra hits. So, you get Stalker. Whilst this unit contains an Exarch and is wholly within or on a train feature when resolving attacks made with ranged weapons against your unit, your Striking Scorpions, -1 to hit. Sure, -1 to hit and cover. Could be really trolly with Altiok. I'll have to try it out. My Striking Scorpions, I just got in a batch of Find Crap 1s that I've been waiting to hit the order button. They're being painted up right now. They're like the only bloody ones that I haven't. They're like the only aspect unit that I've not owned, rather except for the all graceful, loving, and fantastic Shining Spears. So yeah, the Striking Scorpions. You've got Crushing Blow, add 2 to the strength characteristic of this unit's Striking Scorpion Exarch. That's good with the Scorpion Claw, making it from strength 6, 7... Oh, actually, no, you'd add 2, so you go up to strength 3, 4, 5, making you strength 10. Yeah, strength 10 Scorpion Claw. Anything, that's good. That's good. Scorpion's Grasp. When resolving an attack made with a Scorpion Claw by this unit's Striking Scorpion Exarch, an unmodified hit roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound, in addition to any normal damage. Nah. Whilst this unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch and is wholly within or on a terrain feature, this unit can always fight first, even if it's charged. Same caveats as normal with all the fight first things. Withdraw. At the end of the fight phase, if this unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch and is within 1 inches of any enemy models, it can make a fallback move up to 6 inches as if it were the movement phase. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll never say no to hit and running. Hit and run is fantastic, so lets you get out of dodge. Means they've now got to charge you. Lets you get back into cover or out of line of sight, potentially. 6 inches is not a lot. It'd be great if they could move 7 inches or, 8 inches or, anything above 6. It has its uses. It's potentially alright. And then you've got the Scorpion Sting. Now, this is just the flat-out best one. This is just the flat-out best one because the Manda Blaster's Mortal Wound is the #1 thing you're really taking this unit for, other than the copious amounts of chainsword attacks. Whilst your Striking Scorpion Exarch is in the unit, add 1 to the rolls made for this unit's Manda Blaster's ability. Yeah. Yeah. Shining Spears. Oh my goodness. This is going to cause a lot of people heartache, because anyone who plays these knows that Shining Spears are probably they are the best aspect next to Fire Dragons and Dark Reapers. Those are the top 3 aspect warriors. Now, they've got the Expert Hunter, which is pretty good, but now you get a whole bunch of new toys to make these guys even more trollolololly. As I said, these are the only ones I don't own, just because they're a pain in the ass, because you've got to actually buy them up and convert them with conversion bits, and finding those bits in my country is a pain in the ass. So you have Withdraw. It's the same thing as before, so they get to move away 6 inches. This is great because you can cycle charge if you live. or you can stay tied up with something. Now, it says at the end of the fight phase, right? Now, this is the important thing here that's really great about this, is you charge into an enemy unit, they are faced with a choice of either they fall back and let their army shoot your shining spears, or they stay in combat with your shining spears, they try to take a few wounds off them with whatever you charged, and then, at the end of that fight phase, you fall back 6 inches, now it's your turn, now they're free to shoot, and now they can charge in again, getting their charge bonus with their weapons, and dealing all the damage. Quite honestly, I think that might just be the best one. Then you got Swooping Dive. You get to add 1 to your unit's charge rolls. Blade Master, if you have the Paragon Saber, which you never have, you get the damage characteristic of 3. Lancer, when resolving an attack made with the Laser Lance or Star Lance by the X-Arch, unmodified hit roll of 6 causes an additional hit. No. Skilled Rider, the Shining Spear X-Arch has a 3+ invulnerable save against ranged weapons. Yeah, you could use that to tank some hits, but withdraw. You already have a 4-up invul save on that, but withdraw. Withdraw is, just in case you couldn't tell, withdraw is clearly the superior choice here. Heart Strike, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit's Shining Spear X-Arch, an unmodified hit roll of 6 does a mortal wound. In addition. Withdraw. This is a unit I would pay to have both Expert Hunter and Withdraw on, because Withdraw's not bad. Crimson Hunters. The fact that these are an Aspect Warrior still escapes me. But, you have them. And, oddly enough, it's only for the Crimson Hunter X-Arch, which is the only Crimson Hunter worth taking. Because in case you're unaware, it's only a few more points for better weapons and better abilities. You should never bother with just a standard Crimson Hunter. Always go straight to the X-Arch. Now, it has its Marksman Eye ability, which is a very good ability. It makes your Crimson Hunter X-Arch, well, it makes it what it is. Superior to the Crimson Hunter, normally. So this would be one that's worth using the 1 CP to give it an extra 1 if you want. And you can give it things, such as Aerial Predator. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by this model against a unit that can fly, you add 1 to the damage characteristic for that weapon. For that attack. So, +1 damage to things that have fly. There are a lot of things that have fly. That's not bad. And of course, you're armed with a lot of anti-tank weapons and anti-marine weapons on the Crimson Hunter. So, yes. Evade. It gets a 5+ invulnerable save. Not bad. It can make it kind of trolly, because you have -1 to hit, combined with Altioc, you're -2 to hit, -2 to hit with a 5-up invul save. I don't think the Crimson Hunter actually has Spirit Stones, and I don't think you can give it Spirit Stones. Otherwise, you could supplement that with a 6-up Feel No Pain, but hey. Nothing's perfect. Hawkeye. This unit does not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. Yeah, that's great. That's great because you have a 2+ ballistic skill, which is always going to be a 3+. Now you can have a 2+ rerolling ones. Yeah, that's pretty fantastic. Simply because, again, it's carrying a lot of heavy weapons. And hitting on 2s is great with heavy weapons. It means it's not just relegated to shooting things that fly. It's still no Wraith Fighter. It's still no Hemlock. But this makes it worth it. This potentially means it's worth actually bringing it and the Hemlock. I mean, you could bring 3 Hemlocks, or you could bring a Crimson Hunter and 2 other Crimson Hunters. Or you could bring 2 Crimson Hunters and a Hemlock. It has potential now. It actually competes, in my opinion. Otherwise, before, it was just always go the Hemlock, and there's no reason not to. So, Strafing Run, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against a unit that cannot fly, you can reroll wound rolls of 1. Pass. Eyes of Cain. When resolving an attack and made with a ranged weapon by this model, the target does not receive the benefit of cover to its saving throw. Pass, it already has enough AP3, AP4 weapons. Aerial maneuvering. When this model moves, you can pivot up to 180 degrees before it moves instead of up to 90. So this thing essentially gets two, because of how Eldar flies work, it gets two 180 degree rotations when it moves. Congratulations. It's never flying off the board, even if you screw up. It's never flying off the board. Unless you really, really screw up and, like, forget to rotate. Ah, boy. Yeah, it's fantastic. Anyway, but while the aerial maneuvering's good, Hawkeye and Evade and Aerial Predator are definitely the best ones there, with a lot of potential. Warp Spiders. This was an interesting one. I run them with what some people, I've had this discussion with some other players, they think it's the worst one. It saved my bacon in both games. So, some variation there, I guess. I think it's a good strategic power for your Warp Spiders. Anyway, Iron Resolve. It's not great. Feel free to replace it. I did. So, Surprise Assault. When this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a Death Spinner by a model in this unit, and the turn in which it's set up on the battlefield, you can re-roll the hit roll. Yeah, actually, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. That first turn strike with them, that's more potential wounds that you can roll for. Searching for that good old -4 with strength 6 weapons. Withdraw? No, you don't want that. Not on Warp Spiders. They shouldn't be in melee. If they are, you're trying to finish something off and things have gone horribly wrong. Web of Deceit. Very simply, while your Exarch is alive, you can pick up the unit once per battle, put it anywhere else on the board, 9 inches away from enemy units. It's good. It's a nice strategic power. In the case where, now, Warp Spiders move stupidly fast, but in the case where they can't get to one side of the board to grab that all great objective, or get right on the other side of the board to nab that really annoying unit in the flank, well, I can just pick them up and drop them down. No muss, no fuss. It's good. Some people will argue against that. I think it's great because Eldar are all about playing the objective game. Spider's Lair. This is good when you're in a terrain feature, Holy, and an enemy unit finishes a charge and move within 1 inches of your unit. You roll a d6 on a 3+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. Sure, you get that in addition to Overwatch. That's cool. Flickering Assault. You get to pile in up to 6 inches if your unit contains an Exarch with that power. No. Spider's Bite is for Power Blades. Let me tell you this. The Power Blades are not worth it. Move on. Okay. Now it's time for Runes of Fortune. This is some interesting stuff. So the Runes of Fortune are something I've played around with now, and they're quite interesting from a competitive standpoint and quite interesting from a gaming standpoint. Not all of them are fantastic, and the real trick is figuring out how best to use them. Now, instead of knowing Smite, a Craftworld Psyker model can instead know one of the psychic powers from the Runes of Fortune discipline. Now, I'm pretty sure that applies to the Wraith Fighter, but I'm not entirely certain on that one. Even so, the Wraith Fighter is probably best off just living with Smite and Jinx and or Horrify, simply because the one that's best here is Impair Senses, and it's an interesting power, but it's 18-inch range. Now, the powers themselves, they range from meh to okay, and quite frankly, given their nature of the best ones being buffs or debuffs, they're typically better on a Farseer. The first game I played using the Psychic Awakening stuff, I Swapped out Smite on all my Warlocks. I ran quite a Warlock heavy list. Threw in lots of these psychic powers instead of their, crummy Destructor Smites for the, 6-inch 1 mortal wound. And basically I just decided after that first game, I would rather just have the Smite. And that was reinforced in my second game where I tried the same thing again. Simply because the powers are quite situational and they're quite... only a few of them are really exclusively useful in any sort of circumstance. It didn't help that in the first game, I didn't quite get one of them off. In the second game, I certainly got one of them off, and it was quite troll-tastic. So, in terms of what you can get, so the first one is Fateful Divergence, warp value of 4, so nice and easy to cast. It essentially gives a Salamander reroll to a friendly Craftworld unit within 6 inches of the Psyker. It's one of the few ones that's good on a Warlock, but also good on a Farseer. It's like a substitute for Guide, so you can run Fateful Divergence, Executioner, and Doom or Fortune. I always prefer, well, Doom or Fortune, one of the two. So, it gives you the Salamander reroll, and if you don't know what a Salamander reroll is, basically the target unit, when it goes to, at any point in its, until your next Psychic phase, it can reroll a single hit roll, a single wound roll, or a single save roll for that unit. It's good, it's interesting, it's obviously got its uses on units that need that reroll. It can help increase the benefits. You can, if you're not using Guide, you can use it to get more reliable hits on your low shot Eldari units, which typically pack your high powered guns that you aren't supporting with an Autarch. And even then, if you are supporting an Autarch, this will let you reroll the 1s and A2. So it's good for just increasing your fire. I found it useful on... Now, it says I found it useful on the the Fire Prism that I used. I found it useful on the Dark Reapers, especially, to an extent. And Dark Reapers, I suspect, is going to be your primary target for this, especially if you're not running with Bael'Tan and using their Warlord trait to give them rerolls everything, or if you're not just casting Guide on them because you are mean. But even then, this gives you a leg up because you can have them 3 up, hitting all the time, your Dark Reapers. You can give them reroll 1s, this will let them reroll a 2, so you're going to get a lot of hits there. And then you'll be wounding on 4s against toughness 8 and, 3s for everything else. A few things are T9. And, you have Doom, and you should always have Doom on whatever they're killing. So it's not super useful for that. But if you don't have Doom, it's an extra potential wound coming right up, because they're high-powered guns. So, it's probably one of the most useful, and it's very easy to cast. Witch Strike, I'm going to say this is probably not the least useful, but it's definitely not fantastic. Witch Strike is a casting value of 4. The Psyker, until their next thing, they get 2 damage. They add 2 to the damage characteristic of their melee weapons. This means your Witch Blades become D3 plus 2. It's not bad, but it says melee weapons, and to be honest, Singing Spears are best when thrown, is basically my thoughts on that. And if your Warlock is in combat, well, that's really not good. Your Warlock is just terrible, with only 2 wounds and 2 attacks. He's a sergeant. There are the Officer of the Fleet, Imperial Astra Militarum Imperial Guard unit, has more wounds and more attacks. It's not good. But it's there. If only there was a way to swap out your psychic powers when in middle of the game, like Space Marines do. Wouldn't that be nice? Ghost Walk. Ghost Walk's pretty useful. Definitely I think it's got great when you're combining it with Quicken, because if you have a Warlock cast Quicken, and then you have something else cast Ghost Walk, its warp charge value is 6. It's 6-inch range. Any friendly Craftworld unit until your next psychic phase. You add 2 to the charge rolls. That's pretty good. Coming out of Deep Strikes, coming out of Transports, it's good just for increasing that. It's pretty trolltastic on some Banshees, giving them a total of +5 to their charge roll. That's pretty fun. So it's just good for increasing that, making sure you get that. Really good for making sure you get in and shut down the Overwatch with Howling Banshees before you follow up with your other more reliable charges, or making your other charges that much more reliable. It is what it is. It's warp charge value 6. It's not fantastic, but I'm not going to argue with an add 2 to the charge rolls. It's one of the better ones here. It's definitely better than Witch Strike and the next 2 powers. Crushing Orb has a warp charge value of 4. You select one enemy character unit within 18 inches and visible to the Psyker. You roll 3d6, and for each 5 up, you score 1 mortal wound. It is potentially worse than a Warlock's Destructor Smite. Nah, thanks. And you would never, ever, ever, ever put that on a Farseer. What you would not waste your time on with it. You have Executioner, which is better than Smite. And you pretty much a staple. You always want it just for that extra little bit of mortal wounds. I didn't used to run Executioner, but in the past couple months when I've been playing Eldar, and the past couple games, it's been always take Executioner. You've got plenty of other ways to get rerolls, so Doom and Executioner are my go-to, and then a second with Doom, or with Fortune and Executioner. Now this is really good because you can now take out that Smite and give it a Fateful Divergence or an Impair Senses, which we'll get to. Before Impair Senses, we have Focus Will. Its warp charge value 6. One friendly Craftworlds Psyker model within 6 inches of the Psyker. Till the end of the phase, when a Deny the Witch test is taken for that model, add 2 to the total. No, not really worth it in my opinion. Unless you're really fighting something that out-psychers you, and the only thing that can out-psycher Craftworld Eldar is demons to an extent, and Thousand Suns. And quite frankly, your guys are great. You have a lot of Deny the Witches, and getting that +2, and you've got rerolls with the Farseer. Nah. It's overshadowed. Focus Will is meh. Crushing Orb is terrible. Witch Strike is okay, but you never want to be in that situation. Ghost Walk is serviceable. Fateful Divergence is good, or okay. Impair Senses, this is potentially troublesome. It has a warp charge value of 6, and you select one visible enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, when that unit is chosen to shoot, models in that unit can only target the closest visible enemy unit unless the target is within 18 inches. So, I was quite confused on how this worked, but it got me a moment to get my head around it after putting it into practice and talking it through some other players. You pick an enemy unit, and it can shoot at anything within 18 inches normally. But it can't shoot at anything further than 18 inches. So if it wants to target something beyond 18 inches, it has to target something that's instead within 18 inches. It's really interesting. It's forcing a target priority on your opponent. So something that I did in a game is I cast it on a Baneblade, funnily enough, and I forced said Baneblade to shoot Warwalkers because they were within 18 inches instead of shooting my Dark Reapers and Fire Prism base, supported by my Autarch. So there was a Wraith Knight there. It died. It died every game. Wraith Knights die every game. They're bad. But still, it's good for forcing that. if you could take it on the Hemlock Wraith Fighter, it would be really hilarious, because you could force it to target the Hemlock, and with Altiok and lightning fast reactions, things that are hitting on 4s are hitting on 7s, and things that are hitting on 3s are going straight to 6s. Combined with Altiok in particular, and this is what I tested it with, it is an extremely annoying ability that says to your opponent, you don't get to play the game. Now, Altiok's already really good at controlling controlling your enemy's target priority. And that's a lot of 40k. Shooting and target's priority. So it is flat out the best one of them. And practically, in practice, it performs the best. The issue is, you sometimes want to cast it on things that you want to kill, things that you fear, and the issue is, if you then pour all of your fire into that and you roll above average, you can potentially kill that, and that's that psychic power wasted. So, after the first game, I realized very quickly the better way to do impair senses is to target something that I fear, but I won't be throwing everything into. So, there's that. That way I can kill one thing with my Dark Reapers and my huge fire base and all my anti-tank fire. So I can kill one Baneblade, in the example of the games I played. I can kill a Baneblade or one Knight, and then the other Baneblade or Knight or Super Heavy or big tank that I fear, like a Repulsor, I can force that one to target something I want. So it helps, especially with Craftworlds, dictate so that they are shooting with their very powerful unit into the unit you want. Whether that be chaff, and just, something that's disposable to you, like Guardians, or whether it's something obscenely tanky, or something they just physically can't hit, but they have to assign attacks into it. And the cool thing about it is, they have to assign all their attacks at once for things that have lots of guns, so it means, with this psychic power, that Knight has to waste all of its firepower, that Baneblade, that Repulsor. It can't disperse if you've only got one thing within 18 inches. Everything has to go. If you've got multiple units within the 18 inches, it can disperse amongst them. It can shoot anything within 18 inches normally. It's when it's shooting things outside of 18 inches and you have, like, one thing inside of 18 inches, or even then, because of the way the ruling is worded, if you have everything outside of 18 inches, it has to still shoot the closest if it's in range with its guns. I can't express... The power's a little complicated, but it is obscenely good with the Craftworld, and I love it. It's proven useful in most games when it hasn't been denied, or when I haven't wasted it because of a misplay on my part where I overjudged the or underestimated the killing value of fully buffed and debuffed units, so that enemies have -5 saves and -1s to their invulnerable saves. Anyway, that is that for the Runes of Fortune. They are pretty good, 2 of them. One of them is meh, the other 3 are terrible. So it's about what you'd expect for a standard Psychic lore. They can't all be gems, like the majority of the Runes of Fate, but... And then finally we come to Craftworld attributes. Now, a lot of Craftworld attributes are very subjective in terms of what kind of list you're running, and they can definitely be built to do it. In terms of are they superior, or are there superior combinations when compared to the base ones? Eandon, Samhan, and Altiok are flat out better. They're better than the equivalent things here that try to do the same things, and they're also just really good traits that are just better. But if you're like me and you typically like to run your own Craftworld and you use a less cheesy or subpar attribute, these are pretty good. And there is some potential in here for some pretty fun play. Like the Space Marine ones, you pick 2, and you combine them. So there is that. So you've got Children of Cain as the first one. Aspect Warriors, unmodified wound rolls, add 1 to the damage characteristic. But it's only for melee weapons. So extra damage on Banshees and Scorpions, pass. Children of Morheg, when resolving an attack made by a model with this attribute in a unit in which at least half of its starting number of models have been destroyed, add 1 to hit rolls. For the purpose of this attribute, destroyed models returned to a unit with this attribute are still considered to have been destroyed, in case you heal them somehow. So, that power has got really interesting potential. Now, it's a shame it doesn't work with vehicles, because that would mean your vehicle's hitting on 2-ups and you can move around, and you definitely aren't going to suffer the penalties of moving and firing, which means you save points with the Crystal Targeting Matrix. It's not for that kind of list. It is, however, for the Aspect Warrior and Infantry spamming list, where you've got lots and lots of infantry, which is completely viable with Eldar, and you're taking immense casualties, because even you will take casualties, you will get blown off the field. If your unit survives, it'll be hitting on 2s, even if it advances with assault weapons. So that's where its potential lies. So for anyone who's familiar with the old 7th edition, or has heard tales of it, that's how you get your weapon skill, ballistic skill, 2+, like we used to. It's okay. It's very interesting, it's very circumstantial. I think it's got potential with the right spammy infantry list, but it's definitely not one of the best ones. Children of Prophecy is fantastic. In terms of, are you bringing lots of Psychers? If the answer is yes, then this is a trait for you. And when I say lots of Psychers, I don't mean, 2 Farseers or a Farseer and maybe 2 Warlocks. I mean lots and lots of Farseers and Warlocks. Like big squads, like the Conclaves and such. Children of Prophecy. When a psychic test is taken for a model with this attribute, each individual dice roll of a 1 is treated as a 2. So even on a double 1, you can still manifest the basic warp charge value 4 runes of fortune. It means that even if you roll a 1 and you get really low on your other dice, you've still got a good chance of getting smite off, even as the difficulty increases. And typically, in general, so long as you roll well on 1 dice, makes it really good. Combine this with Farseer rerolls, command point rerolls, combine it with Concordance of Power stratagems, and your psychic powers become even more reliable. Which is good when you have to deal with the warp charge value 7 and warp charge value 8 powers that the Runes of Fate have. Children of the Open Skies, a unit with this attribute that can fly, advances an additional 2 inches. Yeah, no. Yeah, everything is already fast enough in Eldar. You're good without that. Diviners of Fate, model has a 6-up invulnerable save for that extra bit of protection. 3-ups, 6-ups are not fantastic, but for everything else in your army that doesn't have heavy aspect armor, which is 4-ups and 5-ups, this is pretty good. We lost the ability in 8th edition, right at the beginning when our codex came out, to give hollow fields and that for 5-up invulnerable saves and 6-up invulnerable saves to our vehicles. This is a good way to get invul saves just across the board on everything. It's wasted on things that have 5-up invul saves, but of course it's not for them and you can combine it with something else. That's the important thing to keep in mind. Expert Crafters is good. It gives a Salamander reroll in the shooting, fighting, or when Overwatch. The same, it basically does what Fateful Divergence does. Again, except you can't re-roll a save roll. So that's the only difference there. It's pretty good, actually, especially with low number of shots and the fact with low number of shot, high damage weapons. Your heavy weapons, it eliminates the need for a lot of babysitting and just increasing your efficiency where you might be re-rolling 1s but not 2s and you're hitting on 3s. Or 4s because you got negative 1s because you didn't bring a crystal targeting matrix or you can't target the closest thing for whatever reason. It has its uses. It's a very solid trait, just ask Space Marine Salamander players. Grim. You get, and they shall know no fear from the Space Marines. In other words, you get to re-roll your morale dice. No, that can piss off. That's trash. You already have a high enough leadership, and Eandon makes you only lose 1. That's better in every case. Hail of Doom. This would be a good power if it weren't for the 12-inch caveat that exists. When resolving an attack made with a shuriken weapon by a model with this attribute against an enemy unit within 12 inches of that model, improve the AP characteristic of that weapon by 1. So, your AP 0, shuriken weapons become AP 1 at 12-inch range, which for Guardians is their max range with the standard shuriken catapults. You have the 18-inch Avenger Shuriken catapults. You have Shuriken cannons, which are 18 and 24. You really don't want to be that close, because in most armies' cases, you're going to be in rapid-fire range, and you don't want to be getting hit back. The goal with the Eldar is not to get hit back, or to mitigate getting hit back. Now, that trait doesn't affect these, when you roll a 6+ to wound, it becomes AP -3. That's still there. It just means you're slightly better when it comes to dealing with Marines and the likes when you're within 12 inches. And cover is a little less helpful to your opponents. But for that, there's also a trait called Masterful Shots, which I'll read next, which ignores... You ignore cover. Yeah. So you've got Martial Citizenry. When resolving an attack made by a Guardian model with this attribute, you reroll hit rolls of 1. Free reroll hit rolls of 1 on Guardians. That's not bad. It's actually not bad, especially when you compare it with Hail of Doom. But if you're bringing that many Shurikens and you're bringing a lot of Guardians, you're probably better off pairing that with a few other different ones. Headstrong, when a charge roll, you add 1 to charge rolls. No thanks. Hunters of Ancient Relics, you add 1 to attacks characteristics of models whilst they're within 3 inches of any objective markers. No. Masters of Concealment. So, it's the exact same as the Altuak one, where if you're being targeted for a shooting attack and you're more than 12 inches away, instead of having -1 though, you have cover. Cover is substantially more, how do I put this? It's worse. It is very much worse. Having played a lot of games where this can be the case, your heavy aspect warriors go to 2-up saves, your aspect warriors go to 3-up saves, your guardians and rangers go to 4-up saves in the open. It's good, but the -1 is flat out better against most armies, especially since the main thing that cover was good against protecting was lots of bolt of fire and lasgun fire and lots of small arms fire. Well, the -1 is better against the Tyrannid spam low AP fire, the Guardsman lasgun spam, and with the new Space Marine Codex giving AP out like candy, the extra armor save just puts you straight back to where you were. So it's worse in every way. The only place it actually benefits anything is on your vehicles. And it is very, very useful for your vehicles to give them a majority 2+ save in almost every situation. With the, a few caveats of lighter armored vehicles, especially since you've asked majority T6, but again, the -1 is just flat out better because AP is now given out like candy, and the things that are going to shoot to Space Marine Infantry, and the things that are going to shoot your vehicles that now have a 2-up save have AP -3, AP -4, so you're going to be going up to an invul save or a 5 to 6 up save or no save anyway. Exactly where you would have been without it. The -1, much better. So in terms of Altiok, just flat out, I'll say it, because I looked through this and I made the decision to play with Altiok for all the games where I tested this. Altiok is just still flat out better competitively. Non-competitively, if you don't want to, be really mean and make your opponent not have a lot of fun, the Master's Concealment is a little less douchey. But it's nowhere near as strong. Mobile fighters, when resolving an attack made by models with this attribute in a turn in which they disembarked from a transport, reroll hit rolls of 1. Now, sadly, because it only applies in the turn in which they disembarked, emergency disembarked from your transport being blown up is not helpful. So you're going to lose that. But for mechanized lists with Banshees and Wraith Guards, that's pretty good. Not Banshees, Fire Dragons. Savage Blades, when you charge and are charged or heroically intervened, you reroll hit rolls of 1. Pass, you have better ways to get rerolls of 1. Strike and Fade. This is a caveat where you can only take it by itself. You can't combine it with a second attribute. It's the only one in here that's like that. And it is reasonably powerful. It's tactically powerful, and it has 2 parts to it, but I think there are stronger combinations in here that you get from combining 2 of the other ones. So, Strike and Fade, units with the attribute can charge during the turn in which they fell back, so you can retreat and charge, and they don't have to consult if they are... that is not within 3 inches of an enemy unit makes a consolidation move, it does not have to end that move closer to the nearest enemy model. So you can consolidate in any direction after you finish wiping something out in melee, assuming you've somehow managed to accomplish that. It's not as easy as it sounds and or looks. Students of Vol. Melee requires a fair bit of setup, and your shooting is far more reliable. Who'da thunk? Students of All, this one's pretty good. You basically steal the Necron's living metal. Each vehicle with this attribute regains 1 lost wound at the start of each of your turns. Not as great as Eandon. Bone Singer is still, pretty good in there. Bone Singers will help this out, giving you D3 plus 1 back. It's good if you're going vehicle heavy. Eandon's still better if you're going vehicle heavy. So, it's okay if you want one of these other ones. Now, the next one, Superior Shurikens, I consider this one probably the best. Simply because 12-inch range on Shurikens suck. 18 inches is not preferable. And you want to be as far away as possible. So, combine Superior Shurikens with anything else, like Students of Vol, or Masters of Concealment, Martial Shots, Martial Citizenry if you're bringing lots of Guardians, Hail of Doom, technically, or Children of Morheg. Now, it is important to note that Hail of Doom and Superior Shurikens do not stack, for what I'm about to say. Superior Shurikens, you add 4 inches to the range characteristic of Shuriken weapons. Shuriken cannons really should be 36. I always forget that they're not 36, so I always have to double check. Because I know, but I don't know, and I always forget. But there are 24, so this makes them 28. That's better. It's not quite 30. Still, the further you are away and the longer range, the more you can make of those Shuriken cannons, which are good, but horribly overcosted, I think. They really should be closer to 7, 8 points when they are 10 points. considering a heavy bolter does the same job slightly better with guaranteed AP but one less strength. No thanks. But it's good for guardians and just regular shuriken catapults, especially bikers, wind riders, and all your characters on bikes. 14-inch range shuriken catapults or twin shurikens. You have 2 to 4 shots now for the twins. At 14 inches, now you're outside of the 12-inch caveat range for Masters of Concealment, so you're still, a little bit defensible. You're outside of rapid fire range for a lot of units, which is good. And most importantly, you are, it would be fantastic if you could combine it with the Altiok, but sadly, that's not possible. And the 18 going up to 22-inch Avenger Shuriken catapults, easily worth it to make the Avenger Shuriken catapults combined with a new Bladestorm ability to have them proccing extra hits on 6s to hit. Just makes them a much more tactically ranged option, which is fantastic because, again, distance is key. You don't want to be near your enemy, you want to be skirting them, you want to be as far away as possible, so extra range helps. I would have loved to have seen a plus 6 inches to everything trait here, but apparently that's not a possibility, even though that would make a lot of our really stupidly short-range guns a lot better. But this helps because it primarily affects the stupidly short-range guns more than any of the others. So, Superior Shurikens is definitely one worth taking. Vengeful Blades, it's the same as one of the other ones I read before, the Savage Blades, except you reroll all hits when charged, am charged, or when you're charging, am charged, or performed a heroic intervention. Except it's got to be against Chaos only. You got Warding Runes, which gives you a 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds only. You get Webway Warriors, which is a rather interesting if slightly confusing one. Basically, it saves you CP when you're using the Webway Strike, which is always good. And it goes up per each detachment you have, so it saves you CP essentially, because it lets you, I like to think of it this way: it essentially reduces the CP cost of that stratagem by 1 when you're putting in multiple units. So you can spend once, because how it's actually worded is you can use the Webway stratagem. The Webway Strike stratagem can be used 1 additional time per battle for each detachment in your army that contains the second, and any subsequent uses of this stratagem can only be used to set up units with this attribute in the Webway. So it's a little complex. It took me a bit to figure out and a bit of discussion with other players. You can basically spend 2 CP to put 2 things in the Webway, or 3 CP to put 3 things. It essentially reduces your cost. You can use it multiple times, essentially. So, yeah. It's really good if you want to go infantry heavy and deep strike a lot more stuff. It saves you some CP, so you don't eat through your CP nearly as much just in deployment. So, there's that. I think it's interesting. I don't think it's the best one. But it definitely is not bad. I would have preferred something a little better worded and something that's, did a little bit more for Webway Warriors. Maybe something... Unfortunately, you cannot combine it with mobile fighters because Webway is not a transport. Otherwise, that'd be pretty good to, come out of the Webway and be rerolling ones. Maybe it would make my Fire Dragons actually work. I've had terrible luck with Fire Dragons recently. They seem to just miss everything, even with rerolls, and fail to wound everything, even with their rerolls. So, No, I'm not sure that would actually help. But anyway. And then the last one is Wrath of the Dead. Wraith constructs, reroll wound rolls of 1. Sure, that's pretty good. It's good for melee. It's good for shooting. It doesn't specify which, so especially deadly for making the D-scythes on your Wraith Guard much more terrifying. And so you can get more D3 wounds. And that's it. That's really all there is in this supplement. Now, as far as supplements go, the Craftworld Eldar got more stuff in Phoenix Rising. But the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari, they got better traits. Now, their traits are a bit more specialized because their army is divided into essentially 3 armies. But they definitely got the better traits. Here, the real winners are your aspect powers. Plain and simple. They are the part of the supplement that is worth having. They are the part of the supplement that makes your aspect warriors really worth it. They were good before, because they were cheap, you can bring them high numbers, and there was specialized infantry that did their jobs well. Now you can make them even more efficient and even more versatile. So Powers of the Aspect Shrines is definitely the thing to stand out in this supplement. Your Runes of Fortune range from 1 really good power to 2 okay powers to 3 dead on arrival powers. Your attributes range from meh to okay to flat out bad. I suspect that a lot of people won't really be using the Craftworld attributes. I won't really be using too many of the Craftworld attributes outside of casual play. Maybe matched play games where, you know, it's just I'm meeting someone down at the local game store and just having a friendly game. Or where I'm doing a narrative game, because I love to do those narrative games. I'll use these there just to experiment with them and do some interesting stuff. Maybe I'll dial it back a bit with the ridiculous -1s that you can stack. But the generic ones, the generic attributes, they give really good warlord traits. They have really good relics, and the attributes are just better. So I don't suspect you'll see a lot of, and they are better for competitive play. The pre-existing named attributes, even Beltan is better. And I actually run my guys as Beltan most of the time when I'm not going to a tournament. When I do go tournament and super competitive, it's always Altiok. Or if you're running vehicle heavy, you go with the good old Eandon. Ulthway is a fun one. I've only played around with Ulthway once. In a competitive scene and once in a narrative scenario. It's not for me, but it's pretty good technically. It saves you points with 6-up Feel No Pains, free Spirit Stones essentially on everything. The Runes of Fortune, competitively, you will see Fateful Divergence, you will see Impair Senses, and you will see the occasional Ghost Walk. The other powers you will probably never see in a competitive game, or even in a just casual game, because they're not great. A standard Smite is better. There's lots of flexibility in the aspect powers, as I said, and they are definitely the most competitive part. In terms of how much they influenced my overall games recently playing them, the Dark Reaper ones for the extra shot definitely made a difference. It typically gave me an extra 3 damage on things. The Fire Dragon ones never helped at all because my Fire Dragons just sort of failed at everything in the past couple games. I attribute that to just bad dice rolls because that's really what it's been. Other aspect powers I need more time to play around with. The Swooping Hawk one, they've been pretty good. Just for increasing their anti-Gek. The Howling Banshees I've only taken the once, and I left them with their standard Aspect Shrine power, because that -1 to hit in melee is tasty. I'll always take a -1 over Feel No Pain. The Shining Spears, I see that being very competitive. The Crimson Hunter one finally makes the Crimson Hunter X-Arch actually really good. It actually has the potential, especially with the Hawkeye, so it can actually hit on 2+. It actually makes it good for doing what it wants. It actually makes it good for targeting other flies, and actually makes it good for just using those heavy weapons that it has without suffering too many negatives. The Warp Spider ones, Warp Spiders are already a really competitive choice. You don't lose the flicker jump. So the Surprise Assault is really good. I see that one being used for that drop down, one really big hit. Unfortunately, it only works for that first time. Web of Deceit is also one use, and is really good for that strategic redeploy to nab objectives. So that's a really good one. The other ones are not so much, but the Dire Avengers, their traits definitely make them a lot more competitive. The Dark Reapers don't really help them out a lot more. They're already really good. It just sort of gives them an extra potential damage output. So they're the thing to take away from this. They're the competitive thing. They make Aspect Warriors acceptable substitutes for Guardians. In fact, they make the Aspect Warrior spam lists already super deadly and super cheap even that much more deadlier. So overall, the Jane Zar is also really powerful, but that's what you expect from a Phoenix Lord. Overall, the supplement of Phoenix Rising has been mostly disappointing. It's not as good as I thought it would be. It was not everything in it is nearly as useful. It's definitely doesn't compare to any Space Marine supplement that's come out with their separate supplement books. And I suspect that's going to be the thing forward, where everything is just inferior to those supplement books, because those books were just so crazy good. Even the bad ones are so crazy good. Like, everyone raves about Iron Hands, which is really solidly powerful. But even Salamanders, the Imperial Fist, even Raven Guard, even White Scars and Ultramarines, they're all really good and thematic. And not only are they thematic, they're powerful. This, not so much. Some nice, interesting toolboxes for competitive play, and just some extra stuff to play around with for narrative games and casual games. Still very disappointing. More so, even more disappointing on the Dark Eldar side, which I won't talk about too much. But essentially, your attributes, your obsessions, because they have obsessions, not attributes, your obsessions might be better, but they still don't compare to the base named ones in the Codex, to be honest. The Codex ones are still better. And the Inari, they're just terrible now. I'm thankful for the points reduction on the Incarn, because he's good, and Ivrain's okay. But the Inari are very trash, with the exception of their Warlord traits. They're not a good army. So, and the fact that all this cool stuff for Craftworlds, you lose if you are an Inari army, because you do have to be, you do have to actually be Craftworld Azuriani. So, there is that. Alright, that's enough from me. This has been Jay from Jade Productions, signing out.